Wednesday, the 8th of June, and today is our weekly special where we hand over the reins to you.
Yes, we do indeed. So we've been asking you, our lovely viewers and listeners, to choose what we discussed today, and we've delivered, basically, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, you've sent in an eclectic mix of questions. Why are we too soft on crime? Who did the pollsters actually poll? And even whether we need to embrace bold men.
Bit weird, anyway. But the most important part of our show, of course, is your views. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Keep them coming in. We're reading your views throughout the show.
Yes, that's all coming up until midday, and we'll get going in just a second. But first, your headlines with Rosie.
A very good morning to you. It's just 1 minute past 10. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Now, railway workers have announced 3 days of strike action later this month in what unions are calling the biggest strike on the railway since 1989. The Rail, Maritime and Transport Union and 13 train operators will walk out on June the 21st, the 23rd and the 25th over potential job cuts and pay freezes. The planned strikes coincide with Glastonbury Festival and the Test match cricket. The Independent's travel editor, Simon Calder, says the disputes between the unions and the government.
The union is betting that, yes, they can shut down the country. The government is thinking, hang on, we've probably got enough people who we can rely on, and people, of course, not needing to commute in the same numbers as they did before. We are probably going to see not a fully effective strike. So I think the first 3 days of strikes are going to go ahead, and then there will be some talks after that. But I'm kind of bedding in for a long summer of discontent, I'm afraid.
Boris Johnson will face MPs at Prime Minister's questions later today for the first time since Monday's confidence vote. Although Mr Johnson won the vote, 40% of his own party said they had no confidence in his leadership. The vote was prompted by the Sue Gray report into lockdown parties, but MPs are also unhappy with legislation to override the Northern Ireland Protocol and high taxation. Labour MP Sarah Jones says the government should act on her party's proposals.
The Conservatives will dazzle us with all kinds of policies that don't amount to very much. But it's the Labour Party that would have an emergency budget. It's the Labour Party that would support those in need the most, that would try and get the economy moving, which is the thing that the government over the last 10 years have palpably failed to do. It's the Labour Party that would reform business rates, which are so unfair for those small businesses.
The Chancellor has reaffirmed his commitment to cut business taxes in the autumn. In a speech to the Onward think tank, Rishi Sunak said he'd be bringing forward a range of measures in the autumn to incentivise investment. It follows criticisms from the Confederation of British Industry that the Treasury's cost of living support package last month didn't include help for cash-strapped businesses. The Health Secretary is promising the biggest shake-up in NHS leadership in decades after a review found evidence of discrimination and bullying in the sector. The report concluded there's institutional inadequacy in how management in the sector is trained and valued. Sajid Javid says the findings are stark and show the need for urgent improvements. GPs are struggling to access scans to diagnose people with pancreatic cancer. Pancreatic Cancer UK surveyed just over 1,000 UK GPs. Only 30% of them said they had sufficient access all of the time to the scans they needed. Around 80% of people with the cancer don't receive their diagnosis until after the disease has spread. Symptoms can be quite vague and include back pain, indigestion and unexpected weight loss. The family of a British fighter in Ukraine who was captured by Russian forces have said they are deeply concerned after he appeared in court in occupied territory. 28-year-old Aidan Aslin is one of 3 men being accused of being mercenaries for Ukrainian forces. He faces a number of charges that can carry a possible death penalty. Aidan's family say they're working with the Foreign Office and Ukrainian government to bring him home. The actor Matthew Mcconaughey has delivered a moving speech at the White House, urging for action on gun violence following last month's school shooting in Texas. 19 children and 2 teachers were shot and killed at Robb Elementary School in the actor's hometown of Uvalde. They were shot by an 18-year-old. McConaughey, who's from the city, said the minimum age for buying a semi-automatic rifle should be raised to 21.
They wore green high-top Converse with a heart she had hand-drawn on the right toe because they represented her love of nature. Wore these every day. green Converse with a heart on the right toe. These are the same green Converse on her feet that turned out to be the only clear evidence that could identify her after the shooting. How about that?
Sir David Attenborough is receiving a second knighthood for services to television, broadcasting and conservation. Sir David was first knighted by the Queen in 1985. He'll now be appointed a Knight Grand Cross of the Order of St Michael and St George. The Prince of Wales is expected to bestow the honour at an investiture ceremony at Windsor Castle today. This is GB News and I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki and Patrick Christie. The time is 10:06 and we're on your TV, radio and online.
Yes, and it's Wednesday, which means one thing and one thing only. Our show is dedicated to the issues on your mind.
Yes, that's right. All week we've been asking you to tell us what you want us to talk about today, and we've got some very interesting discussions lined up with some expert guests.
We do indeed. Lots of you have been getting in touch about how soft we are as a country on crime, especially in light of our discussion yesterday about 11 of the UK's most dangerous terrorists being freed from prison this year. We'll put your concerns to a former Detective Chief Inspector.
Yes, and we hear a lot, don't we, about opinion polls, public opinion in the papers, on the news. Well, after a conversation yesterday with veteran pollster Sir John Curtis, lots of you did get in touch to say you don't know anyone who's actually ever been polled. So, how does polling actually work? Well, head of political polling at one of the country's big polling companies, Opinion, will be joining us to take your questions.
Yes, and now that the Prime Minister's position has been weakened, apparently, he intends to change tack. And lots of you have been telling us what changes you want to see from the government. A popular one has been scrapping net zero, for example, and of course bolstering our own energy supplies. The CEO of fracking giant Quadrilla joins us to discuss.
Yes, well, that's just a taster of what we have coming up in this hour. We have much more as well over the next couple of hours, including your view. So get in touch with them at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Right, well, in my monologue yesterday, I mentioned how a terrorist convicted of wanting to blow up Bluewater Shopping Centre, and indeed London's one of London's nightclubs anyway, has got his parole hearing coming up soon. So our inbox has been packed full of your comments and reaction.
Yes, well, one of the most popular issues that so many of our viewers often and listeners often write in about is crime and law and order. And is our criminal justice system too soft? That's what many of you ask. And one viewer certainly thinks so. Phil said this. What we want is more hard-line action against terrorists, longer sentences, control of our borders, and police action against grooming gangs.
Yeah, absolutely. Another viewer, Aaron, has criticised, quote, the soft approach to law-breaking, the lack of respect brought on by the lack of discipline, and the stripping of police powers. Well, is the UK too soft on crime? That's what we're going in on today. Get those views coming in, gbviews, gbnews.uk. And we're thrilled to be joined by Peter Kirkham, former Detective Chief Inspector with the Met Police. Peter, thank you so much. Great to have you back on the show, mate. I hope you're keeping well. Are we too soft on crime?
I'm not sure it's a question of being too soft on crime, but we haven't got anywhere near sufficient resources allocated to policing and dealing with crime more generally. We can look back at reports of the Inspector of Constabulary and other bodies to which the police are answerable, and we'll find criticism after criticism after criticism about all aspects of policing, starting with bobbies on the beat in community officers and officers within communities, going through to answering the phones within a reasonable time, going through to response teams, going through to CID investigations of minor, routine and more serious crimes. So, you know, there's just insufficient resource dedicated to policing and crime.
Yeah, one of the big things, I mean, we mentioned there, we talked yesterday about the 11 terrorists who are due to be released this year, whether it's on parole or it's just because of, their sentence has come to an end, basically. One of the things lots of our viewers say is, well, a simple thing you could do is just increase sentences for these violent criminals. And, of course, that would mean building more prisons. But don't you think that's a relatively straightforward thing that the government could do to make people feel safer?
It would be something that could be done relatively simply, albeit expensively. But you'd still have the problem at the end of the day. You can't throw away the key for everybody. There will always be people coming out of jail, and some of them, sadly, again, because of lack of resources dedicated to the prison service, the rehabilitation bit of penal policy just isn't working. Yes, there are some people that, despite everything, come out of prison and don't reoffend. But there's an awful lot of reoffending goes on, primarily because there's very little in the way of rehabilitation exercises and activities done whilst they're in prison. And again, we come back to resources. You cannot do these things on the cheap and expect magic results. It simply doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't happen. I think, look, you know, I spoke about this quite at length yesterday, really, about the terror issue. And my concern, well, I think most people's concern, is that we let this lot back out and that they just, you know, immediately go back to their kind of terrorist ways. I remain unconvinced, Peter, that rehabilitation can work for someone who's planned to blow up a shopping centre, for example. And how do you feel about it?
Some cases where rehabilitation is very difficult or impossible, for sure, and people with such sort of entrenched and long-standing views as many terrorists have, where the hole has been dug really deep, it's going to be particularly difficult. We know that sex offenders are another category where rehabilitation can be difficult in some of the more serious cases. But they are relatively small in number. And if we got the rest of it right, we could dedicate more resource to keeping more of an eye on those that we've got some doubts about. But the whole thing needs people. It needs people to monitor. Yes, you can do automatic monitoring and all the rest of it, but somebody's got to try and make sense of that and us trying to decide what to do as a result of what's being observed. So there's no shortcut to this. Unfortunately, this government seems to think that there is.
Well, this is something you would have heard a lot, I'm sure, about the police going too woke. And in fact, Aaron, who emailed us in, said the problems with today's justice system is the damage by the woke movement. Now, do you think that's a bit of a red herring, or actually is there some truth to that?
It's a total red herring. The police are caught in a catch-22 situation here. If they don't express support by getting involved in various campaign and pressure groups that are demanding action on violence against women and girls, against domestic abuse, against racism, or whatever it might be, if the police do not engage with them, get involved with them in the various events and activities that they have, and sometimes there's a sort of day of action or an annual day of action, if the police don't participate in that, then they would rightly be criticised for failing to take account of a minority group with particular problems from crime affecting them particularly. If they do take part in it, then frequently, almost invariably, the pictures, the comments, the write-up is taken out of context and becomes a headline in some of our more anti-police media, saying that the police have become too woke, when in fact it's a relatively small number of people on a relatively defined occasion, often one or two officers for a day, if that, for an hour or two. And it's not something that's a major issue more generally.
Is there a recruitment crisis with the police? Are we recruiting the best possible police officers, do you think?
I think there is a recruitment crisis. Policing's paid okay, but not well, not anymore, not after years and years of standstill. It's not a well-paid job, especially when you take into account the massive responsibilities, as well as the personal risks and the other difficulties that go with it. So it's not an attractive proposition that people go, yeah, that money's really good. Yeah, I'll have some of that. People tend to do it despite the money not being too good. I regularly speak to people nowadays who have taken a pay cut, even from being a PCSO, have taken a pay cut to become a police officer. And that obviously means that there's a huge number of people that simply aren't going to be joining because of those barriers. You see the few that overcome them, but there are many, many more, I'm sure, that simply cannot afford to join the police, cannot join the police for a variety of other reasons. The police is not a good recruiting organisation. It's appalling, in fact, and it just churns people.
Good stuff. Well, Peter, look, thank you very much. As always, Peter Kirkham there, of course, former Detective Chief Inspector with the Met Police, giving us his sage wisdom on all matters
sad
policing.
dog at the end of
I
something
did wonder
there.
about that,
Maybe
actually.
his dog wants some attention.
Yeah.
I'd actually love to be, well, if I wasn't as academic as I was, which led me down to going to university. And
you about to say you're too smart to be a police officer?
No, that's absolutely not what I'm saying. I'm saying if I was not as academic as I was, I would have pursued a career in the police and been in the more sort of on the ground work in the police, because I think it's a great career, but I think they're underpaid and they put up with a lot, and they have all these sorts of, you know, the kinds of woke things people are referring to when they talk about it. It's not coming from the police men and women themselves. It's coming down from above, and they're being told to do all these ridiculous things.
I think like the rainbow helmet stuff was a bit much, though, and I think as well, you know, like I think most people would like police to stop crime, and I think the idea that, I think, for example, during the pandemic, you know, if you got broken into, for example, and people were saying, oh, it's taking ages for police officers to come around, but they're doing TikTok dance videos, it doesn't look particularly good, but anyway, I'm sure it's just a fringe minority of police officers.
Interesting view, actually. Somebody has just said they're not recruiting the best people. We have too much influence now from academia, which is kind of my point. I don't think academics, people who are academically apt, need to be going into the police. They're already ruining everything else with all their mad theories.
Dennis has been on. Bring back the death sentence for terrorist crimes, for more convictions as well. So kind of ties in with what I said yesterday, Dennis, which is, I think if someone is, in my opinion anyway, I know you disagree, but in my opinion, if someone's convicted of a serious terror offence, like, you know, plotting to blow up a train station, just execute them, be done with it. Why are we paying for them?
Well, Andrew says that ex-copper you just had on said that police do not have enough resources. Maybe if they went back to driving normal cars instead of BMWs, got off their butts from monitoring people's hurty words, emails, so referring to hate crimes there, they might have more money. Somebody has also said, Steve here has said, how many hours were spent investigating Partygate or escorting illegal refugees to their hotel, or investigating shouts of abuse at football matches. So actually, the no resources thing doesn't cut it for some people who think they're spending time doing a lot of other things.
Also, what's wrong with driving a BMW? I drive a BMW. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, you had to get that one in, didn't you?
What's wrong with... You're right, Land Rover. But yes...
also, to be fair, I don't want a police... If I'm calling the police, I want them turning up in the whizziest car possible, not in some banged-up Fiat Punto, which, by the way, that was my first car.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's good. It's good, because when you're in a BMW, you just don't have to use indicators. So
BMW drivers are the worst.
Yeah.
They really are.
Well, they don't come with indicators.
They have an arrogance about them. BMW and Audi drivers, I've noticed, are so arrogant on the roads, they make me
absolutely,
quite
but
cross.
you get there quickly, and that's the main thing. Anyway, keep these views coming in, GBViews, GBnews.uk. But after the break, can we trust our opinion polls? So we ask a pollster, why have they got it wrong in the past, and why have you never been polled? Do you know anyone who's ever been polled? I don't know anyone who's ever been polled. I've never met someone who's been polled. Anyway, right, tune in after the break.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern. A cloudy and damp start for some of us this morning, but the persistent rain that we've seen go through overnight is being replaced by showers. And away from the showers, there will still be some sunshine. Nevertheless, low pressure is in charge. A weather front has been moving slowly from the west overnight, and that's coming to a standstill across central parts of Scotland. And so it's a damp morning for the central belt, and then that rain edges into the Grampians and the Highlands by later this morning. To the south of that, brighter skies, some sunny spells, but also frequent showers, some sharp showers with rumble of thunder in places even some hail. Now, the showers will be moving through quite quickly on a breeze in the south, and away from the showers, still the potential for 22 Celsius, but the showers will be slow moving across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and northern England, so could be some tricky conditions on the roads where those showers occur one after the other. The far north of Scotland, meanwhile, stays fine through the day, some sunny spells here and some warmth, particularly around the northwest Highlands. But for much of the UK, it stays cloudy overnight. Further spells of rain affect parts of northwest England, southwest Scotland, North Wales as well. Generally, though, the showers and the rain eases by dawn, and there will be some clear spells, some sunshine to start things off across parts of South Wales and southern England. Areas of clouds still lurking close to the North Sea coast, so perhaps a dull start here. Showers break out for parts of northern England and Scotland by the afternoon, but a more persistent spell of rain returns to Northern Ireland, to parts of Wales, as well as the southwest, particularly over the hills in the west. And the breeze picks up. Now, that breeze is going to be the main feature later Thursday into Friday and Saturday. Increasingly windy, unusually so for the time of year, with the risk of gales in the far northwest. That breeze accompanied by sunny spells, but also some showers.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Time. Good morning, it's 10:23 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Moroki and Patrick Christie's on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, now, so much of our political discussions and much panic, of course, been determined by what's in the polls. What do the polls say?
Yes, but the polls have got it wrong in the past, as we all know, notably with the EU referendum and failing to predict Donald Trump winning in the United States. Some people are a bit suspicious of polls. Andrew, for example, has got in touch and he says this: I'm sure these pollsters are fine, upstanding, unbiased and trustworthy people, but isn't it coincidental how often they are proven completely wrong?
Yeah, and it's a common view, that. Well, is Andrew right, though? And why is it, basically, that many of you, our viewers and listeners, have never been polled? I don't think I've ever been asked to be polled. So we wanted to find out, didn't we? How does it actually work? What's the crack, basically? So Chris Curtis is head of political polling at Opinion, and he joins us now. Thank you so much. Why have I never been polled? Now, how do you go about polling people?
Well, I'll start with your first question, if you like. I mean, the country's very big, is the honest answer. If we look across the entire United Kingdom, there's, 60 million people living here. An average opinion poll surveys about 1,000 people. And if you survey 1,000 people completely at random, you can get a pretty accurate view about what the entire population thinks. So about 1,000 people, you can get a pretty accurate view, assuming that everyone's selected at random, of what 60 million people think, as long as the people are selected at random or a representative of that wider population. So, if the reason you won't have been, polled particularly often is because we just don't need to poll that many people in order to get that representative sample.
So how do you get a representative sample? Because some people would say, of course, that, in the past, some of the big calls have been wrong. I know you're not responsible for the polling on Trump, for example, but, Brexit, I suppose some would say that maybe they were a bit off on that. So how do they go about getting a representative sample?
So traditionally what would have happened is people would have gone around and knocked on a random selection of doors across the country. And then, that was considered to be too inefficient. So what people started doing was randomly calling people up from across the country, randomly calling up phone numbers, asking them if they'll take part in a survey. Then the PPI crisis came along, and it basically meant people stopped picking up their telephone and speaking to strangers because they assumed it was some spam call they weren't interested in. So that doesn't work particularly well anymore either. So now what we tend to do is we poll online. So people sign up to take part in online panels or take part in surveys. We pay them a little bit for their time and then we ask them a series of questions on a regular basis. Now, the people who sign up to take part in these surveys aren't particularly representative of the population. Right. They're more likely to be from certain demographics or things like that. Yes. But what we do is we take that, we take that and we beat that into shape, basically. We take the unrepresentative sample of people who are willing to take part and we make that representative by, making sure that we're speaking to the right number of men and women, the right number of old people and young people, the right number of people who voted Conservative and voted Labour at the last election, and all the factors like that.
Yeah. And how many people, when we see these sorts of polls, just give us what the standard sort of sample size that would be deemed reliable would be for these sorts of polls that we see, snap polls and things politically.
So every opinion poll has what we call a margin of error. And basically, the larger your sample size is, the smaller the margin of error is. So, if we say 33% of people said something in an opinion poll, and that opinion poll was of 1,000 people, that means that what we call the margin of error is plus or minus 3%. So it will be 33% of people, but it could be as high as 36%. It could be as low as 30%. There's always a bit of a margin on these things. And the larger the sample size you do, the smaller that margin of error. But traditionally, we say we want sample sizes to be at least 1,000.
Good stuff. Jean's been in touch. I think it's a really important question, this, actually, so thank you very much, Jean. So she does YouGov polls, apparently. She says, sometimes I don't think I don't think they ask the right question, sorry. Is it quite easy with a poll to lead people down a certain route?
I think it is quite easy to do that. And actually, it's very, very hard not to. So, there's two, I think, really important skills as a pollster. The first is to make sure that you're doing all of that work I just spoke about to make sure your sample is representative, and that's incredibly difficult. But secondly, it's about making sure you're asking the right questions. You're asking them in a fair and balanced way, and you're asking them in a way that truly reflects the views of the British public. Now, we don't always get that right. And I think there's quite often I'll look at a survey I've run and gone, oh, I wish I'd done that slightly differently or asked that slightly differently. There's definitely a science and an art to it. But it's an incredibly hard job, and that is one we're always trying to be better at.
Yeah, yesterday we had Sir John Curtis on, obviously a giant in this field, and he gave us the results of one poll that had been conducted, I assume the day before. It was on Boris Johnson's popularity, and I think it was 60%, he quoted, something along those lines, of people think he should resign or are not in favour of Boris Johnson at the moment. We were bombarded with emails saying, what, that's ridiculous. Most people I know want Boris Johnson. We're not against it. This is a mainstream media plot against Boris Johnson.
Stop Boris bashing.
Yeah, Boris bashing. What would you say to that to convince perhaps those people that actually it's quite a rigorous way of, it's quite a rigorous result?
I mean, look, what I'd say is generally we're friends with people who are quite similar to us. They may come from similar backgrounds. Quite often they have similar political views. So the people that we come across in our lives are a lot more likely to have similar political views to us. What we're aiming to do in an opinion poll is make sure we're getting the spread of the country and make sure that we're representative. And that's always going to be more accurate than, one friendship group or sort of our assumptions about what's happening. And look, I'll accept, as you sort of hinted at, that some, opinion polls aren't perfect. Sometimes we can get things a bit wrong because our samples aren't representative enough, for example. We're always trying harder to get it better and more accurate, but sometimes we are a little bit wrong. But even when we are wrong, if we take the most extreme example of, say, the 2015 general election, we thought that it was going to be neck and neck. The Conservatives ended up being about 6 points ahead. So, a bit of an error there of about 6 points. If we apply that to Boris Johnson, the number of people who want, Boris Johnson to resign at the moment, it's about 60% want him to resign, about 30% want him to stay. So even if we apply the biggest error ever to those numbers, it's still an overwhelming majority. I think Boris Johnson should go right now.
If I wanted to commission a poll right now and I wanted that poll to have a certain result to it, so let's say I was a Prime Minister, right, and I wanted a poll that could go out in our national Sunday papers that would say that people think I'm doing a pretty good job. Could that happen quite easily?
No, not particularly. Look, you can always try and commission questions that, try to put out a view the British public think something they don't, and you can try and spin the poll results in a certain way. But that's an incredibly hard thing to do. And most sort of reputable pollsters, like, what I think we tried to do in opinion, would not allow a question to go out that misrepresents the views of the British public. We have sign-off processes on questionnaire design to make sure that they're accurate. We have sign-off processes on press releases to make sure that the results are being reflected in an accurate way. Some stuff sometimes slips through, but the kind of thing that you're hinting at there very rarely happens.
Good stuff, Chris. Look, I can say that was really informative,
Thank
actually.
you. And it took me back to my quantitative social research lectures, and I want to leave that behind me. It was a traumatic time in my life.
Yeah, I did a dissertation on polling, but there we go. Chris, you should have written it for me. Chris, thank you very much. Chris Curtis there, of course, head of political polling at Opinion. Really informative, that, actually, because, look, we do get inundated a lot of time with, I don't trust the polls, and that's fair enough, right? They're not always
people
right.
trust the polls that agree with their own view.
This is it, isn't it? but I think it's fair enough. If people have been badly burnt before, the Trump election, Brexit, etc., and I think that's reasonable. But it's interesting to kind of like behind the scenes look at them. Really, is it how they actually do it? How's it put together? Because we see these things. 60% of Brits want Boris to go. Well, who are they? Who have they asked? How have they done it?
I think they're pretty rigorous, and they are sort of regulated, so to speak, by the Polling Research Council or whatever it's called. So they are rigorous, but I understand people's hesitancy when it comes to believing all polls. But let's move on. At 11 o'clock, which is in just about half an hour, we'll be talking to our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, about how people are changing their lives to adjust to the rising cost of living. And we really want to hear your stories about the changes you've had to make, the adjustments you've made, because you just don't have as much money as you'd like to. Tell us your stories, get them in at GBViews at gbnews.uk, and we'll get to those at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, well, after the break, of course, we're talking fracking. That's right. So will shale gas help reduce our energy bills? Or is it an environmentally dangerous and unpopular measure? But before that, here's the news.
Good morning, it's 10:33. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. Now, some breaking news for you. In Berlin, the fire brigade are reporting that 30 people have been injured after a vehicle drove into a crowd in the west of the capital. Now, Germany's Bild newspaper is reporting at least one person has been killed. The driver, the suspect, has been detained by police. At this point, the motive is unclear. Of course, this is a developing story. These are live pictures we're showing you on the ground in Berlin. We'll keep you up to date here on GB News as soon as we get any more information. Moving on now to the UK. Railway workers have announced 3 days of strike action later this month in what unions are calling the biggest strike on the railway since 1989. The Rail, Maritime and Transport Union and 13 train operators will walk out on the 21st, the 23rd and the 25th of this month over potential job cuts and pay freezes. Now, the days of action will cause significant disruption and they coincide with Glastonbury Festival and the Test match cricket. Boris Johnson's going to face MPs at Prime Minister's questions later today for the first time since Monday's confidence vote. Now, although Mr Johnson won the vote, 40% of his own party said they had no confidence in his leadership. The vote was prompted by the Sue Gray report into lockdown parties, but MPs are also unhappy with legislation to override the Northern Ireland Protocol and high taxation. The Health Secretary is promising the biggest shake-up in NHS leadership in decades after a review found evidence of discrimination and bullying in this sector. The report concluded there is institutional inadequacy in how management in this sector is trained and valued. The family of a British fighter in Ukraine who was captured by Russian forces have said they are deeply concerned after he appeared in court in occupied territory. 28-year-old Aidan Aslin is one of 3 men accused of being mercenaries for Ukrainian forces. He faces a number of charges that carry a possible death penalty. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.252 to the dollar. The pound is 1.172 to the euro. The price of gold currently stands at £1,477.10 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, very good morning, everyone. It's about to go 10:38. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's and Mercy Murky on GB News, live as ever on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, now it's Wednesday today, which means we're addressing all the questions you've posed to us in our inbox. We've been asking you to get in touch and tell us what you want to talk about, or what you want us to talk about. Well, our next viewer question is about fracking. One proposal to help reduce energy bills and reduce our dependence on foreign energy has been to restart large-scale fracking in the UK. However, there has been local and environmental objections to fracking.
Yes, well, environmental group Greenpeace say, quote, "Not only is fracking bad for our climate, it risks causing air, water and sound pollution. An accident could mean that these chemicals leak into water supplies or cause pollution above ground." Well, one of our viewers and listeners, John, wrote in to say, "There are too many fake stories influencing public opinion, and it is such an important issue since it could help reduce people's energy costs in only a matter of months if the government fast-tracked it."
Yes, well, to answer your questions about fracking, we have Francis Egan, Chief Executive Officer at Quadrilla, a company fracking giant, really. Francis, we really appreciate your time this morning. Fracking, I'm sure you'll admit, is controversial. Recently, Quadrilla had to actually close down 2 of its shale wells in Lancashire. We know of earthquakes that have happened in 2018 and 2019. Is it really worth it restarting fracking in England?
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me on. I think the fracking has been dogged by any number of scare stories, everything from fracking sand will give you cancer, which was put out by Friends of the Earth, to the numbers of earthquakes, so-called earthquakes, that have caused our sites to be suspended in Lancashire. Subsequent reports, scientific reports into those earthquakes, acknowledged that all bar one were imperceptible, couldn't be felt at all at the ground, could only be recorded because we were required to measure at an extraordinarily sensitive level. And the one that could be felt was at half the level that typical construction sites generate. Yeah. So I think these scare stories have been overdone, to say the least.
They have been. Francis, I don't want to ask too much of a personal question, don't get me wrong, but I'm really intrigued about this because, look, you know, we speak out regularly here about this just stop oil nutters and things like that. So we're kind of, I suppose, loosely speaking on your side. But how does it feel from your perspective? Because some people do, look, they bracket people like you or people who frack whatever as like kind of evil, right? Do you get a lot of that? How do you feel about that?
Well, I do get a lot of it, but I don't get a lot of it from people who spend any time looking at the facts. I mean, we were famously described as the moral equivalent of paedophiles on Russia Today quite some time ago. And Russia Today ran lots of anti-fracking stories. And you might ask yourself reasonably why. So I generally take these things with a large pinch of salt, and of course you have to. But what I find is that a lot of people are supportive, but they don't go out and demonstrate to say that they're supportive. So if you were just to read the press or look at your TV screens, you might think that everybody's against. But we got a lot of support in Lancashire, and I get a lot of personal support into my inbox saying we should be doing this. I mean, it's been going on in the United States for 20 years. There's no water being polluted in the United States. There's no earthquakes destroying cities. And I know everybody says, oh, well, it's all being done in some desert in the United States where nobody lives. There are wells being drilled there, but there are also wells being drilled in Colorado, in Pennsylvania, you know, in populated areas without issue.
Yeah, we were talking about polling earlier and samples, and maybe the people who are anti-fracking are not a representative sample of the country. But I did want to ask you, can we speak numbers? Because obviously it's your position that fracking could lead to people, would lead to people paying less for their energy. What kinds of percentages are we talking here? Would it be a significant change in the in the amount of money people spend on energy?
Well, gas, it's relatively simple. Gas is a commodity. You know, there's nothing that distinguishes gas in one part of the world from gas in the other part of the world. And a basic law of economics is you know, if you increase supply and demand stays roughly the same or goes down, then prices will go down. So, of course, increased supply, particularly domestic supply, will result in reduced prices. And this gas will be sold domestically. It doesn't make any sense for anyone to pipe it or ship it overseas, because simply that costs money. And we have a gas network in place in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Francis, thank you very much. Francis Egan there, Chief Executive Officer at Quadrilla. Now, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Andy Mayer of the IEA. Thank you very much, Andy. Great to have you back in the studio. You've obviously sat through that there as well. I mean, in terms of fracking, people are a bit scared, aren't they, I think? Because I think it's maybe the action itself more than the reality of it all.
Well, I think a small number of people are very scared, and they're the same people who get wound up and scared by every single environmental scare story you see in the media. So fracking was the perfect storm in the last decade because it's happening beneath your feet. You can't see what's going on. It's about the earth shaking. Chemicals are always used as a pejorative rather than the thing that's actually responsible for the progress we've seen in humanity for the last century. And these things all came together and it created that environment where the politicians started believing, not necessarily the detail of what the environmental NGOs were saying, but that it would be not more trouble than it was worth for them to progress with fracking. And that's what's led to this situation where we're sitting on these vast reserves of oil and gas in the middle of an energy crisis. It's like dynamiting a gold mine during a gold rush is one way of putting it.
Exactly that. And it becomes increasingly more difficult to justify. When you see, you know, Edna in Milton Keynes or whatever, who can't turn the heating on, she can't afford to, it becomes increasingly hard to justify not using what's right beneath our feet.
Well, it's actually happened today. There were 3 applications for different types of onshore drilling that were put to the Community Secretary, Michael Gove. And he's refused 2 of them and allowed 1 of them. And the one he's allowed is the conventional gas drilling, as it just comes up rather than needing to frack. And he's refused the 2 fracking ones. And some of these have been delayed for 3 to 4 years. So this is not a serious way of tackling an energy crisis. This is just at the planning stage for exploration. This is even before you start getting the stuff out of the ground in quantity. Some of the reasons given for refusing the applications or delaying them, it would cause a loss of amenity to a gypsy camp. It would be inconvenient for a wedding planning company.
Right.
A fence is in the wrong place.
Yeah, you can't say that.
And on that point then, I mean, the government throughout the last 2 years has spoken a lot about following the science, haven't they? That's how they've positioned themselves, as how they approach policy. They follow the science. Are you saying when it comes to fracking and lifting the ban on fracking, they're not following the science at all? Actually, it's very politically motivated.
Of course it's political. I mean, when people say follow the science, they usually try to imply that science is a matter of absolute truth versus easily falsifiable premises. It's about risk management. And the risks of fracking are known, quantifiable, and can be mitigated. So you can manage operations in a way that reduces the risk of anything leaking into the environment. And that's what they have to do anyway because of the regulatory environment. You can make sure when planning applications go through that you are sensitive to local needs. But it's not supposed to be an absolute. You can't ever say to people, we're going to do something in your local area and it'll be completely convenient, you'll love it, and it'll be all great. What planning needs to do is encourage development in a responsible way, and it's not doing that at the moment.
And in your expert opinion, really, on this particular issue, now, even if we started to get our backside in gear right now, we're a bit behind the 8 ball here. We should have been trying to do things like drilling and explorative stuff a while ago, shouldn't we? I mean, is it already too late? In a sense.
Well, it's never too late because this energy crisis will go on, and even if global prices come down temporarily, there's always a risk they'll go up again. Now, if we think about it strategically, we're trying to help Europe wean themselves off Russian gas. The best way of doing that is drilling as much as possible here, both in the North Sea and onshore.
Could we have enough to supply Europe?
We could certainly make a significant contribution. Norway is the other big pool in Europe, and there are areas across Europe that if we set the example and actually showed how to do fracking in an environmentally sensitive and sensible way, then other places in Europe would be less nervous about doing it themselves.
That's really fascinating stuff. Andy, thank you so much, as always, my good man. Great to have you on the show. Andy May there, of course, who is at the IEA. And something that definitely Andy doesn't have to worry about is male pattern baldness.
I was wondering how we were going to segue into
And that's how we did it. And that's how we did it. So male pattern baldness, a receding hairline or a general thinning of hair, is the source of concern for many men.
Yes, well, the reason for baldness is often the source of much speculation. Some are more ridiculous than others. Mary, one of our regular viewers actually, got in touch to say this. If I was told that if a man wants to know if he will go bald, he should look at his mother's father. That's what she was told. This is probably nonsense and an old wives' tale.
I don't think it is. Because I actually think I think that is true.
Their mother's father, their maternal grandfather. Okay,
which is great because every single person on you can go back as far as you want, right? They've all got great hair in my family. Fantastic.
I need to.
Yeah.
It's not the thickest I've touched, I'll admit.
Well, yeah, but all right, fine, but that's weird. OK, but I think you'll find my hair is very thick, as am I. But anyway, right, OK, anyway. Are you concerned about losing your hair, for example? There are plenty of handsome bald men, including The Rock, Bruce Willis, Joe Rogan. Anyway, right. Sajid Javid. Who writes this nonsense? Sajid Javid. I mean, you just look at Sajid Javid, like, whoa, look at him. Yeah, so Sajid Javid's calendar is about to drop, presumably. Anyway, you talk.
Wow. Well, joining us to talk all things baldness is Dr. Martin Kinsella, who's actually a hormone and aesthetics doctor. Dr. Martin, thank you for joining us so much. Well, you clearly don't have this issue. You look like you have a full head of hair. I mean, first of all, we mentioned there, Mary had asked, is it about your maternal grandfather? Is that a good indicator of whether you personally would go bald? Is there any truth to that?
Slightly, but not fully. So, can I just say your hair looks great? By the way, I've got to say that you've got no problems with male pattern baldness. I think it's a concern for all of us as men, but generally speaking, they've always said that you look at your mother's father. The truth of it is actually it's sort of a multi-pronged genetic approach, and actually you should look at both sides. And actually, you can't. There's no way of predicting if you're going to go bald based on one of your grandparents. But I think what you can do is look at the lineage and look at your father, your grandfather, your great grandparents, and that's going to give you some predictability. But it's not as clear. It's not as simple as saying just your maternal father.
No, I mean, also as well, I mean, fundamentally, it should be said as well, there's nothing wrong with being bald at all. There's nothing, I mean, I think a lot of people actually suit it. I mean, the thing for me is I've got a very round face. So if I didn't have hair, I would look, believe it or not, even worse than I do now. So I just wouldn't suit being bald, right? I wouldn't suit a shaved head, OK? It's not for me. But if you do go bald, you can just get a hair transplant in Turkey on the cheap, can't you?
Well, there's lots and lots. The great thing about today is if hair loss is bothering you, then there's lots of things you can do. So the main cause of male pattern baldness is, we call it androgenic, or actually more specifically androgenetic alopecia. Basically, it's a sort of genetic predisposition to an imbalance in certain hormones in your body. And the hormone in question is something called DHT, or dihydrotestosterone. It's different to normal testosterone in your body. Normal testosterone doesn't make you go bald, but DHT is linked to male pattern baldness. And what happens in some men tend to convert testosterone to DHT. There is now medication that you can take to block that. So there's something called finasteride, or it's been commonly out there under the brand name Propecia, which is used by lots of hair clinics, and that shows very, very good results in not only slowing the hair loss, but also can show it can reverse some of the effects. Yeah. And then if there is obviously other types of things where you can have like PRP, so you can take blood's full of growth factors. You can spin those down. You can extract the growth factors and actually have them injected into your scalp, which is
I've seen that.
Wow.
I understand, look, there's medicines developing all the time, and so there are all these solutions, one might say, for people who don't want to be bald. But I do have to say, I do find it quite sad that men who are balding feel like they have to resort to some of these rather extreme measures, which sometimes involve operation. Because, I'm just saying it's sad as a society almost, because why can't men just embrace being bald? I know many men feel like it's a loss of a masculine trait, but actually, shouldn't we just not frame the conversation as, oh, we need to find a cure for baldness? It's not, a sort of disease, is it?
Well, while I admire the ideology in that, unfortunately, society now, we live in a society that's very much dictated by aesthetics, appearance, and also confidence. So if a man is losing his confidence, or is having anxiety or reduced self-esteem, self-confidence because he's losing his hair, which unfortunately is just the reality of the situation, then it's good that there are treatment options available to them to have it done. Having said that, I think my father's bald, and I could never imagine him with hair. I think he really suits it. I think loads of guys, baldness is a great look for lots of guys. It's all about personal preference and personal choice. And I just think it's great that we live in a sort of age of medical technology and an age of interventional medicine where you can do something about it should you wish. That's my take on it.
No, look, exactly. Can I also ask, where else are you from, actually? Because I recognise that accent.
Manchester.
Yes, good lad.
So I'm based.
Hey, we're on safe territory here. Good stuff.
But my dad's from Liverpool, so I've got a half Manchester, half Scouse.
Half in, half out. Exactly. Well, there you go. Well, look, thank you very, very much, Dr. Martin. Great, and you are certainly a great advert for hair as well.
And teeth. You have excellent teeth.
Basically, what we're saying is you're beautiful. There you go. Yeah. You don't get that on the BBC. Right, Dr. Martin, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us there, talking about hair, really. Anyway.
And how attractive Sajid Javid is, yeah.
Crucially.
Apparently.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Allegedly.
Anyway, right, let's take you through some of the headlines of the day that you may well have missed. Now, you might remember the guy who lived off fish and rice... Oh, yes. The guy who lived off fish and rice cakes, otherwise known as Danny Andrews, who has had an incredible 4-month body transformation.
Yes, well, it's been 15 years since Andrews first rose to fame on the BBC Three's documentary Baby-Faced Bodybuilders, then First Dates, and now he's opened a barber shop, but people only seem to know him for his diet.
Well, he might have been mocked for his strict routine, which is basically, in case you're wondering, fish and rice cakes.
Yeah, all he had was fish and rice cakes, breakfast, lunch, dinner.
Have a bit of fish, then have a rice cake, a bit of fish and a rice cake. Yeah. Anyway, you all know the drill. But anyway, but obviously, I suppose, really, he's done very well for himself. But it's clear his ability to commit pays off, basically, with the results. We all saw him there. Look at him, he's absolutely ripped.
See, I'm not attracted...
Is that a tattoo of Donald Trump on his chest? No.
Yeah, but I'm not attracted to that kind of body type, to be honest.
I think, weirdly, I am.
like frumpy men, quite frank.
Gosh, well done.
No, it's too overdone. It's too slick. You need to be
fat.
Not fat, but chunkier.
Right, well, I mean, I'm built like a blancmange, so I mean, hopefully that helps. But anyway, right, okay. I think we found the diet. Obviously, you need to follow up to get on stage with the Dream Boys. So I'm obviously... So actually, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, cheeky little plug here. So tomorrow... well, actually, two things. So later today, I am going to be walking barefoot through the woods. Yeah,
as you do.
Absolutely.
With the strange man.
With Nathan Dunn, right, who is walking the length of the UK from John O'Groats to Land's End barefoot to set a world record. We are, as you all know, we've been trying to help him out a bit here. We've been raising money as well. JustGiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christie's. So I'm going to be walking with him later barefoot. We'll record that and get it out. But the day after, I am officially learning my Dream Boys routine. That's right. It's something I never thought I'd say on. I've just heard groans from the gallery.
Will this be recorded?
Don't worry, it's already sold out. No, what?
Will this be recorded?
Yes.
Oh, so we get to see you...
Be on national television. It's almost like I shouldn't have done it, isn't it?
Wow.
Almost like
are you actually quite nervous deep down?
Massively nervous, yes.
Because what's the audience size?
Mostly middle-aged women on handies.
No, but what's the... I don't mean the size of the women. I mean how many people there'll be.
Like 1,000.
Oh, God.
It's big. It's a big thing, yeah. No,
it'll be the only big thing on the...
Thank you very much. Right, OK, so moving on now. You know that nursery rhyme, all the Queen's horses, you do it.
All the Queen's horses and all the Queen's men. Well, maybe not so much anymore, as female soldiers in the Queen's bodyguard have asked the army to stop calling them men, while privates in the foot guards are also known as guardsmen, whether they are male or female. Now, the army is considering changing the name guardsmen following complaints by female soldiers. The spokesman said, or spokeswoman perhaps, we remain open to different views on the naming of ranks. I did not realise female soldiers were woke.
No, who knew, eh? Right, OK, anyway. Moving on, a Republican lawmaker in Texas said that he would like to enact a statewide ban that would prevent minors from attending drag performances. Yes, good stuff. I saw some pictures the other day, right, of kids, actual kids, putting, like, money down a thong of... a drag act, right? I've got nothing against drag acts if that's a cracking night out. What I am saying is, what on earth are you doing in a primary school?
Yeah, it's bizarre. So this is a Texas Republican, Brian Slayton, who wants this ban. I always find that this is why, if I was in America, I'd be getting more and more Republican as time goes on, because some of the things that the Democrats are doing, particularly in schools and letting this kind of thing go on, I would absolutely not want my child to be going through that.
Well, I just don't expect to be confronted by that. And then the thing is, this is how they get you, right? Is that, like, it's not the fault of the drag act. Again, I want to emphasise I do enjoy that kind of thing. But they get paid to attend something, and then you get there, and then you go in about it, and you go, sorry, just out of interest, why on earth did you bring a semi-naked man into my 6-year-old's class? And they go, what, you're a transphobe? And that's how they do it. It's like, no, I'm not a transphobe, I just think that's out of order. Anyway, moving on. Right, we'll be back very, very shortly, of course. We've got loads more coming up for you. This is your show, GBNews at gbnews.uk. Keep them coming in, we'll see you in a bit.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Right, morning everybody, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christie's and Mercy Murky on your TV, radio and online. We're here with you all the way through until midday. As usual, a show jam-packed full of all the things that you want to hear about.
Yes, and it's Wednesday, which means everything we're talking about today is things you've sent in, suggestions you've sent in about topics you want to hear spoken about. And get in touch with your views as well, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we'll get to those throughout the show. But first, it's time for the latest news.
Good morning, it's just 1 minute past 11. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. Now, some developing news for you. In Berlin, at least one person's been killed and 30 have been injured after a vehicle drove into a crowd in the west of the capital. The driver's been detained by police. At this point, the motive is unclear. It's Germany's Bild newspaper that's reporting that a man had been driving a small Renault. When we get more details, we'll bring them to you here on GB News. Now, talks between Network Rail and the RMT union will be held to try and avert what the union is calling the biggest rail strike since 1989 that's due to take place later this month. Thousands of railway workers have announced they'll walk out on the 21st, 23rd and 25th of this month over potential job cuts and pay freezes. Well, the planned strikes coincide with Glastonbury Festival and the Test match cricket and will cause significant disruption. The Independent's travel editor, Simon Calder, says the disputes between the union and the government.
The union is betting that, yes, they can shut down the country. The government is thinking, hang on, we've probably got enough people who we can rely on, and people, of course, not needing to commute in the same numbers as they did before. We are probably going to see not a fully effective strike. So I think the first 3 days of strikes are going to go ahead, and then there will be some talks after that. But I'm kind of bedding in for a long summer of discontent, I'm afraid.
Boris Johnson will face MPs in Prime Minister's questions shortly, for the first time since Monday's confidence vote. Now, although Mr Johnson won the vote, 40% of his own party said they had no confidence in his leadership. The vote was prompted by the Sue Gray report into lockdown parties, but MPs are also unhappy with legislation to override the Northern Ireland Protocol and high taxation. Well, Labour MP Sarah Jones says the government should act on her party's proposals.
The Conservatives will dazzle us with all kinds of policies that don't amount to very much, but it's the Labour Party that would have an emergency budget. It's the Labour Party that would support those in need the most, that would try and get the economy moving, which is the thing that the government over the last 10 years have palpably failed to do. It's the Labour Party that would reform business rates, which are so unfair for those small businesses.
The Health Secretary is promising the biggest shake-up in NHS leadership in decades after a review found evidence of discrimination and bullying in the sector. The report concluded there's institutional inadequacy in how management in the sector is trained and valued. Sajid Javid says the findings are stark and show the need for urgent improvements. The family of a British fighter in Ukraine who was captured by Russian forces have said they're deeply concerned after he appeared in court in occupied territory. 28-year-old Aidan Aslin is one of 3 men being accused of being mercenaries for Ukrainian forces. He faces a number of charges that carry a possible death penalty. Aidan's family say they're working with the Foreign Office and Ukrainian government to bring him home. The actor Matthew Mcconaughey has delivered a moving speech at the White House, urging for action on gun violence following last month's school shooting in Texas. 19 children and 2 teachers were shot and killed at Robb Elementary School in the actor's hometown of Uvalde. McConaughey, who's from the city, said the minimum age for buying a semi-automatic rifle should be raised to 21.
Mayday wore green high-top Converse with a heart she had hand-drawn on the right toe because they represented her love of nature. Wore these every day. Green Converse with a heart on the right toe. These are the same green Converse on her feet that turned out to be the only clear evidence that could identify her after the shooting. How about that?
Sir David Attenborough is receiving a second knighthood for services to television, broadcasting and conservation. He was first knighted by the Queen in 1985, but will now be appointed a Knight Grand Cross of the Order of St Michael and St George. The Prince of Wales is expected to bestow the honour at an investiture ceremony at Windsor Castle today. You're now up to date on GB News, and I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to Patrick and Mercy.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki and Patrick Christie's. It's 11:05 and we're on your TV, radio and online. And we've got another great hour lined up for you discussing all the issues you want to talk about.
Yes, indeed. Well, rising cost of living have got some of you concerned about your finances. We've been getting, we've got all concerned about finances, hasn't it? Lots of you getting in touch about the lengths that you are going to just to try to keep your head above the water. Our very own Liam Halligan is in the studio. He'll give some advice in just a little bit about how to beat the squeeze for those of you who are still struggling.
Yes, and Inaya Falarin Iman of GB News' very own Inaya joins us as well to discuss some of the biggest culture stories you want to hear about, such as the alarming amount of so-called honour killings happening across the United Kingdom and other issues as well around Islam and free speech. We'll talk about that very shortly.
We will indeed. And finally, as Meghan and Harry return to the Californian life, we review whether they made a good or fleeting impression over the Jubilee weekend with royal biographer Angela Levitt.
Yes, that's all coming up and much more as well across the programme. And you can get in touch with your views. As I said, gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. We'll get to as many as we can.
Right, well, we are the People's Channel, of course, and therefore we want to hold a mirror up to you. And I think it's fair to say that the vast majority of you right now are probably more worried about your finances than you certainly have been for quite a long time. We've received email after email from many of you, our viewers, our listeners, our online viewers as well, telling us about the cost of living crisis, how it's affecting you, what you're doing to try to overcome it.
Yes, well, this particular email from yesterday, one GB News viewer and listener, got our attention. Yeah. Paul said, I miss sending in emails. I still watch your show religiously, but I can't afford my £15 monthly top-up for my pay-as-you-go internet. I'm currently emailing you from outside an Asda where there's free internet. Well, look, Paul, we really are honoured to have you as a viewer and listener. It's so tragic that Paul's story is a story many will resonate with. And thank you for being committed and still watching us.
And if that's who I think it is, anyway, I think that's a guy called Paul Hill, who is officially GB News' most emailed into person. So he sends more emails in than any other viewer. So the idea that you're going to have to try to go to those lengths to go outside and Asda and do it. Paul, we really appreciate you, mate, so thank you very, very much. Well, obviously, huge thanks for sending us in that as well. Thank you for watching and listening as well. But as advisors tell our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, to cut taxes or face losing jobs, there is some hope that things could get easier for the millions that felt the tax rise earlier this year.
Yes, but there's the question of how we all cope in the meantime, and we've brought in our very own economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, to provide some guidance on how to beat the squeeze. Liam, welcome. We've got lots of emails of this nature, as you can imagine. I'm sure you get lots in your show on the money. Is there anything people can do to mitigate the effects of this cost of living squeeze, or are we just going to have to learn to adapt and change our habits?
Well, it is really serious, and I think the government's been slow to respond. Rishi Sunak, Boris Johnson, as if they've have to be dragged to the House of Commons kicking and screaming with the emergency budget, not budget, that we recently had. We can't give financial advice. Ofcom rules mean that we're not allowed to. But I could certainly say to people, check whether or not you are eligible for benefits. There are millions of households in this country who may well be eligible for benefits that aren't claiming them. That's one thing. Another thing I'd say is if you are struggling with your energy bills, and so many people are, of course, we saw that huge increase in the Ofgem energy price cap, then ring your supplier and tell them you are having problems. They have a legal duty of care to you as a customer. You can try and reschedule your payments with them. You can try and get some kind of reprieve. So there are things that you can do. And then there's all the common sense things that maybe people from previous generations would have taken for granted. And people, you know, in today's world don't. And I say these without wishing to be condescending or judgmental in any way. You know, if it's cold in the middle of the day, before you put your heating on, stick a jumper on. I mean, we have these discussions in my house all the time. You know, I grew up in a house with no central heating. I didn't enjoy central heating until I went to university. First person in my family, literally. And that sounds like a sob story. It isn't. It was just pretty much the norm among a big sort of strata of society. So you don't have to put the heating on, even though it is still pretty cold. When's the summer going to arrive?
Well, yeah. A storm from Manchester, I can safely say never.
Well, one helpful tool people might be using to keep track of the amount of energy they're using are smart meters, which kind of show a live feed of how much energy you're using. And we have one at home, and I always notice that when I put the kettle on, it sheets up because it uses a lot of energy. And I wanted to go to a view Alan has sent in. He said, I stopped using my electric kettle for brews. Lots of people are resorting to these sorts of things. Should they be having to, you know, do things as not make a cup of tea because they don't want to use energy?
Well, it does sound pretty mad, doesn't it, that we are in this situation? But a lot of people are struggling with their energy bills. By the way, I do think energy bills are going to go up before they go down again, but I do think there is going to be more assistance coming from government. I just think it's politically infeasible to increase benefits by just 3.1%, which is what happened in April, at a time when inflation then was forecast to be 7%. Of course, we're now on 9%. We're going to go into double-digit inflation quite soon, in my view. So I do think there will be more assistance coming forward, particularly on the energy side, and maybe even on the fuel side. You know, Boris Johnson, he is under enormous pressure now to deliver some policy red meat rather than just a vegan sausage. With no offence to vegans, he is going to have to come forward with some proper low taxation policies directed at lower income and vulnerable households. What I'd personally like to see him do is to raise the starting rate of income tax so you don't pay any tax on your income at all, up to and including 20 grand. It's crazy to be taxing people working really, really hard, often 2 or 3 jobs, to scrape together, no offence, 8, 9, 10 grand a year, and then they pay a load of tax on it, and then they get benefits back. It's just a nightmare.
Look, we keep hearing, don't we, in this country, we're in the middle of a mental health crisis, this, that and the other. What clearly, one of the biggest causes of mental health problems in this country will be financial issues,
course,
right? That's a thing. That's definitely a thing.
Domestic violence, marital breakup.
Oh, my God, the lots of it.
A lot of it stems alcoholism, suicide, let me say that.
Massively so, right? And suicide is the single biggest killer of men in this country under the age of 45. Every day, 12 men take their own lives, by the way. This is seriously a massive issue. And often it's when that bill comes through your letterbox.
That's right.
But, you're the don, really, here when it comes to all things financial. Look, I want you to kind of, if you kind of, just try to reassure people a little bit, really. Like, you know, even if it seems a bit bleak, things can be done, can't they? You don't need to lose hope, really, at the minute, do you? When you see those bills, your electricity bills come through and stuff like that.
No, of course you don't need to lose hope. Look, in most parts of the country, not all parts of the country, in most parts of the country, there is work out there if you want to work. You can top up your income. In most parts of the country, there are many, many, many households who aren't claiming benefits, who, frankly, should be claiming benefits, and even more assertively need to claim those benefits to look after themselves and their loved ones. Go to the Citizens Advice Bureau, go to many of the charities that are there. It's crazy that we're advocating people need to fall back onto charities, but we do have a really good, what we call third sector here in the UK. It's not the public sector, it's not the private sector, it's the charity sector. There is a very honourable tradition of well-administered, well-funded charities helping people out. Not just the church, but of course the church is one of them, but there are many others. So talk about your problems, be open and honest, talk to Citizens Advice, try and claim benefits if you are eligible for benefits. You may well be. Check you're in the right council tax band. Go through all your direct debits. If you have a bank account, of course, quite a few people don't have bank accounts, but many people, there are direct debits sitting there, subscriptions, things that they're not using. They should be taken away and you can save some more money that way.
You bob on, because I found out the other week I've been paying 30 quid a month, right, for basically a swindle, right? I was not aware of it. For something that I think it's just basically a fake website. I've obviously clicked on something once ages ago, and yeah, all right, I clicked on something ages ago.
That's what he tells
it was
the
a pop-up.
girlfriend.
It was a 3 a.m. click.
It was a pop-up. But you know, I've clicked on something and I've ended up, and that's been going on for like 9 months. 10 months, I just hadn't clocked it.
300 quid. It's proper money.
Let's read another view. Stuart says, I'm saving energy by only showering once a week. The days I wash...
I could do that for years, Stuart.
Don't you dare. The days I wash at the basin. There is a serious point to this, is that these things are going to start impacting people's health. I think we had a viewer and listener email in saying they're due to have a surgery, they're disabled, they're due to have a surgery. The doctors have told them, look, in the lead up to the surgery, make sure you're fit and healthy so you have a better recovery. They're saying they can't afford to be fit and healthy because they can't afford to buy much food at the moment. So it's actually leading to problems down the road for people's health.
Well, this is where poncy London-based commentators like me need to be careful, right? But I do come from a pretty ordinary background, as you both know. I would say there are ways to eat cheaply. Don't buy processed food. Buy fresh vegetables. They're often really cheap. You can pick up a bag of spuds for £1. I did it myself at the weekend. That's not to say people should just eat vegetables. Those spuds were most of my basic diet until I was about 16. But there are ways to eat more cheaply. Now, of course, if you are holding down 2 or 3 jobs, then you need to do something processed, quick, you can slam in the oven for the kids. I totally get that. Try and get your friends and family around you to rally round. Do bulk batch cooking. That's the way to do it in order to save money. Use fresh food. You get many more calories and you'll feel a lot less hungry if you eat fresh food rather than processed food, Mercy, that's full of stuff.
Hey, why are you directing it to me?
Is your question. Designed to make you feel more hungry. That's what processed food does.
Exactly.
So it's counterproductive to overpay for that food because as soon as your kids have eaten it, they're going to be hungry in another couple of hours.
Look, absolutely. We've had a little snippet here of Liam Halligan because, of course, you are back on later, aren't you?
I'm on the money.
You're on the money, yes, absolutely. What time?
1 p.m.
1 a.m.
That's a whole
late
different
night
kind
on the money.
I've seen the Patrick's 1 a.m. clicking.
All right, we'll leave it out now. OK, Liam, thank you very, very much, Liam Halligan.
And good luck with the Dream Boys or whatever it is.
I'm going to need it, mate. I'm going to need it. Let me tell you that much. Look, thank you very much, Liam. We'll be on later. Of course, at 1 p.m. Right, OK. So thank you, everybody who's been getting in touch. So I know we kind of keep it a little bit light here, don't we? But we do get emails in left, right and centre about this. And they are very serious. And I've become acutely aware of exactly how much the cost of living crisis is affecting loads of you, right? And I know that we kind of have a bit of a laugh and a joke with Liam Halligan, but it is no laughing matter for a lot of people, right? And we just want you to know that we are with you, OK? We are, of course, the People's Channel, and we're there for you in any way we can be.
Yes, and you can watch us for free as well. You don't have to pay for a monthly licence to watch us, do you? Well,
no, that's right.
You do.
You're welcome.
Do you have to pay a TV licence to watch YouTube?
I don't think so.
Or to have...
No, it's the internet, isn't it? It's the internet.
It's quite
a
bad
modern
that we
world.
don't know.
Well, I'm not paying a TV licence for YouTube. Goodness gracious me. Anyway, Yorkshire reporter Anna Riley joins us now from a food bank in Dewsbury, which had to turn away hungry people after running out of food. Goodness gracious me. Anna, thank you very, very much for bringing us this report. How are you? What's the latest?
Good morning, Patrick. Yes, I'm joined by Tanisha Bramwell. She runs a non-for-profit Bramwell's CIO company, and she produces 30 food parcels per day for people living here in Dewsbury. But sadly, with the rising costs of living, people just can't afford to donate anymore. And it got to a stage, didn't it, where, Tanisha, I know there's food behind us now because of another recent appeal, but you were just left with nothing.
Yeah, we had, I think we had 18 tins left of food. We didn't have any milk, any bread. There was nothing on the shelves, and we were at the point where we were then asking the community that we actually support for donations in order to keep this sustained. So it was quite a surreal moment, but we did put out the appeal, and the feedback has been fantastic, which has been great. But the realities are that, you know, this food isn't going to last long. When we're giving parcels out at 30 per day, and we know cost of living is increasing every day, social needs are increasing every day, that means that we're going to be used and utilised a lot more, which means once this goes, we're going to find ourselves in a very similar situation in the weeks to come.
And what was that like, having to literally turn away hungry people and just say, we've got nothing?
We're awful. And it was terrifying too, because we're not the only food bank in the town centre, and then other food banks are also suffering. But we're people's last chance, you know, we're the last port of call. So if they're not coming to us, then it's quite a dreadful moment, and it is a moment of dread in itself where you think, can I delegate? Because I know that other food banks are, they're very overwhelmed too. So we're all in very similar situations. So it's quite a surreal moment to be in, knowing that we're the 6th richest country in the world. So yeah, it's not a nice feeling at all.
And what kind of people are you seeing? Are you seeing some sort of first-time food bank users as well?
Yeah, absolutely. During the first lockdown, we had what we called our regulars. So we kind of built up a rapport and a relationship with these families. But over the coming months, we're seeing new faces every week. We've got new addresses every week, and we're hearing new stories every week, which is heartbreaking.
And what do you want to happen so, you know, you can keep going and keep supporting people?
Well, like I said, we're situated in the town centre of Dewsbury, and we're not the only food bank that's sat here. In between these food banks is actually our local MP's office, Mark Eastwood, who's a Conservative MP, and we've reached out and tried to communicate so we can have some sort of talk and put some support system in place. Because we need to be working, you know, cohesively so that we can all make sure that we're targeting the same social needs. But we're not having any correspondence at all from his team. We're not having anything from him. And what we want is, we want support so we can continue support.
Thank you so much, Tanisha, and thank you for what you do for the people here in Dewsbury. Obviously, cost of living's rising, and this problem is certainly not going away, Patrick.
Look, thank you very much, Anna. Great stuff. Really great to have that report, even if it kind of shines a light, really, I think, on the cold, hard reality for a lot of people at the minute, which is, you know, look, times are tough, ladies and gentlemen. And, yeah, we are with you. Like I said, we like to, you know, try to keep things a bit light here, but it doesn't mean that we're insensitive about this kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah, and anyway, I think it's quite British to have a humour, to make fun of yourself, be a bit self-flagellating in times of stress and struggle, so it's not...
But it's interesting, I thought what Liam Halligan said before, he was just in earlier, and he was like, look, you know, there are a lot of people out there now who potentially could be claiming benefits, but aren't. But I'm intrigued to see how you feel about this at home, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening in your car or you're watching online or whatever, which is, do you have a little bit of a stigma about the idea of putting your hand out, basically, the idea of going on some form of benefits? Because I think for a lot of people, it really is, you know, it's not. They don't. It's got a stigma attached to it, hasn't it? But in times of crisis, you just got to do what you need to do. So GBNews, GBNews.uk. How do you feel about that? But after the break, ladies and gentlemen, our culture and social affairs editor Inaya Falarin Iman will be joining us to discuss so-called honour killings happening in the United Kingdom. That's after the weather.
Hi there, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Another fine day to come for the far north of Scotland. Showers elsewhere across the UK, with more prolonged rain for some Mostly that will be just north of the central belt as a slow-moving weather front moves north and then effectively stalls through the rest of the day. To the south of that front, extensive showers breaking out across the UK. Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern England seeing slow-moving showers, with some places seeing large amounts of rainfall totals in a short space of time. Could be tricky travelling conditions. To the south again, a keen breeze pushing the showers through. Sunny spells in between those showers. The odd rumble of thunder is possible in some of the livelier downpours, but with the sunshine in between, feeling pleasant enough. 18 to 22 Celsius or 23 in the south. Mid to high teens further north, but feeling cool where we've got the extensive cloud for eastern parts of Scotland. The far north of Scotland stays dry throughout the day and into the evening and overnight, but an area of rain just about affects Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and northwest England through the night time. Clear spells further south again, and a bright start to the day for Wales, the southwest, the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. It does turn cloudy from the west through the day, some outbreaks of rain affecting Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest by late morning. Not much rain, but it will be cloudy and damp in these areas. Brighter skies further east, but still a few showers for eastern Scotland, the far northeast of England as well. But feeling warm in the sunshine in the east, 18 to 21 Celsius. Not so warm as the cloud and rain in the west continues, and the wind picks up later Thursday. And that's the main theme, I think, Thursday night going into Friday and indeed Saturday. A strengthening wind, breezy for everyone, but the strongest winds will affect northwest Scotland with the risk of gales for exposed coasts. And it's across western Scotland and Northern Ireland where we'll also see frequent showers.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
Good morning. It's 11:27 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio.
We certainly are. Now, on a topic that some people may find distressing, OK? It's been 9 years since the murder of Rania Aliad by her husband in a so-called honour killing, right? So it's a form of domestic abuse where, primarily anyway, women and girls are abused for supposedly violating so-called honour, right, OK, of their families and communities. This horrific form of abuse has been increasing year on year, and some campaigners argue that political correctness may be leading to institutional reluctance to confront this issue head-on.
Yeah, well, it's a topic many of you are concerned about, and GB News viewer Christine sent us her thought. She said the very description honour killings is a grotesque misnomer. Surely culture murder would be more accurate. Well, our culture and social affairs editor Inaya joins us now to discuss this more. Good morning, Inaya. Obviously, there has been murders, honour killing murders. Let's use that term for now.
Yeah.
You know, what has been done to address this? Because there is a concern, isn't there, that we don't talk enough about these sorts of things because they are related, linked to Islam, perhaps, and linked to some cultures that aren't, you know, indigenously British.
Well, I think what Christine said is actually exactly right, and many campaigners would completely agree with her, and they are campaigning to get the word honour removed. They would regard it as dishonour, because the idea of honour killings almost kind of glamorises this idea of what is actually a horrific form of domestic abuse, and that overwhelmingly affects women and girls, particularly young women under the age of 25, and it can include forced marriage, female genital mutilation, forced abortions, and in the worst cases, the most extreme cases, murder. And in this country, 12 to 15 women are killed every single year for this form of abuse, and it has been increasing year on year. In 2016, about 888 cases were recorded by the police. In 2021, it was over 2,500 cases. We are talking about a form of domestic abuse that is increasing in this country, and there's very little discussion about what is really going on and who is being impacted by this. So as you rightfully mentioned, Mercy, overwhelmingly it affects ethnic minority women, particularly what some people might describe as closed communities. And campaigners from Freedom Charity and others have said that actually institutional cowardice may be actually leading to institutions not confronting it head-on, fear of being seen as racist, culturally insensitive. But we are talking about extreme forms of domestic abuse. All people, regardless of their background, should face consequences if they're engaging in this.
No, 100%, and I completely agree with the idea that there is there may well be some reluctance to get in amongst it, right? For those reasons. But can I just ask, what is the concept of honour, as it were, the honour killing side of things? So is it like going against, cultural norms, their cultural norms, I suppose?
Yeah, so, for example, in the case of Rania Aliad 9 years ago, as was mentioned in the introduction, she wanted to establish an independent life. She had basically become estranged from her husband and basically wanted to get on with her life after domestic abuse within the relationship. But this is not just something that happens from husbands. It's often uncles, it can be brothers, it can be fathers, and oftentimes when the young women just want to live a normal life in traditional kind of Western society, this is often seen as violating the traditional practices, cultural norms and social attitudes within particular communities. And actually, speaking to campaigners over the last week, we don't actually really know what the numbers are. So, for example, some of these women will get taken to countries such as Pakistan during the holidays and they just never come back. So the true scale of what's going on is really not really being talked about, and we just don't know the numbers. And it is incredibly scary and worrying to find out that this is going on in British society, a supposedly liberal, open, democratic country. And this is what's happening.
Are we too, as a society, are we too scared, reluctant to call out cultures that we think are contrary to British values? Or cultural practices? Obviously, Patrick has spoken a lot about grooming gangs, for example, and some police have admitted the reason they didn't want to cause divisions within communities. Shouldn't we have our politicians, who are supposed to be the beacon of British democracy, saying, look, we espouse British values, we are not scared to say that, and the things that are happening in some of these communities are fundamentally against our values, and we will take a zero-tolerance approach to them?
Well, I would completely agree, and I think that it's, as you mentioned, grooming gangs is a problem of institutional trust and institutional cowardice, but also questions of free speech and tolerance across British society. So we did see, for example, in Batley Grammar, a teacher was forced into hiding for engaging engaging students in
police
questions
protection.
of tolerance. And this teacher is still in hiding over a year later. And we are also having controversies that are unfolding in the UK right now over censorship of films within the cinema because there are protests from certain communities. I actually think that it is a colonial mentality to not hold communities all up to the same liberal standards. It is assuming that they are going to react badly. Actually, if everybody was held to account, then we would hopefully see much less.
But also, I'm not being funny, but, you know, certain things that, you know, are unequivocal. You know, if you're going to react badly to the idea that you've been caught out for things like abusing someone, I mean, well, sorry, I don't care how you feel about that. Just don't abuse people. It doesn't happen.
100%, and I do think that this has been going on for decades now, and there really needs to be some strong sense of political leadership coming from the top that this is unacceptable in British society, let alone any country across the world.
Look, Anaya, thank you so much. Great stuff, that. Anaya Florida Man, on a really, really important issue, this. And look, OK, if you are watching this right now, or you know anyone, or you suspect maybe that somebody that you do know is at risk of things like a forced marriage or honour-based abuse or whatever, help is available. So it's called Karma Nirvana, so I'm just going to spell that out for you, Karmanirvana. There you go. It's a UK-based charity that hosts the National Honour-Based Abuse Helpline that provides free and confidential support for victims. That number is 0800 599 247. You can speak to a representative there about honour-based crimes or violence or whatever, or maybe someone that you're suspecting is involved in all this. That helpline, by the way, is open 9 to 5, Monday to Friday.
Yes, indeed. Well, after the break, royal biographer Angela Levin will be joining us to discuss whether the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are perhaps a bit embarrassed about doing that Oprah interview about the royal family after such a momentous Jubilee weekend. I think they did quite well, actually, and they stayed out of the spotlight for the most part. Well, that's after these headlines.
It's 11:34. I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date now on GB News. A developing story in Berlin. At least one person's been killed. 30 people have been injured after a vehicle drove into a crowd in the west of the capital. What we're showing you now is live pictures. If you're listening on the radio, it is the aftermath of the incident, the car that's driven in to a shop window. The driver has been detained by police. At this point, the motive is unclear. Well, Germany's Bild newspaper is reporting the man had been driving a small Renault. The actor John Barrowman happened to be in the area at the time. In a video posted to Twitter, he described what he saw.
The car came down onto the pavement, then has come onto the road over there, has hit somebody, then has gone down the road and come back onto the pavement down that way, and come back onto the pavement and gone through a bunch of people, gone through the photograph that I posted of a cafe, and then right into a storefront window. I heard the bang and the crash when we were in a store, and then we came out and we just saw the carnage.
Talks between Network Rail and the RMT union will be held to try and avert what the union is calling the biggest strike on the railway since 1989 later this month. The union and 13 train operators will walk out on the 21st, the 23rd and the 25th of this month over potential job cuts and pay freezes. Well, the days of action, which will cause significant disruption, coincide with Glastonbury and also Test match cricket. Now, Boris Johnson is shortly going to face MPs in Prime Minister's questions. It's the first time he's met them since Monday's confidence vote. Now, although the Prime Minister won the vote, 40% of his own party said they had no confidence in his leadership. The vote was prompted by the Stu Gray report into lockdown parties, but MPs are also unhappy with legislation to override the Northern Ireland Protocol and the current levels of high taxation. Well, let's find out more. Our political correspondent Tom Harwood joins us now from Downing Street. Tom, what can we expect the Prime Minister to focus on this afternoon?
Well, the Prime Minister will be trying not only today, but also tomorrow when he's giving a speech, and early next week when we're expecting a further speech from the Prime Minister, trying to turn this conversation back to the issues, trying to shore up his support amongst backbench members of his party by moving on to talking about a tax-cutting agenda, talking about regulatory reform. Yesterday at Cabinet, we were hearing about modernising the NHS, moving it into a more technological age stage as well. When the Prime Minister stands in front of his backbenchers today, he'll be trying to bring that sense of unity, moving past beyond that vote from the start of this week to something more unified. However, it's a steep hill to climb.
Tom, thank you very much, our political correspondent. And, of course, we'll bring you Prime Minister's questions when they begin in about 20 minutes here on GB News. We are on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. I'll be keeping you up to date across the day. This is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.254 to the dollar. The pound is 1.170 to the euro. The price of gold currently stands at £1,476.69 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for physical investment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everybody. It's 11:40. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Muroki on GB News Live, as ever, on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, now the Duke and Duchess of Sussex made a brief but still noteworthy appearance at the Jubilee celebrations over the weekend. They were pictured holding hands at St Paul's Cathedral, where they attended the Thanksgiving service in honour of the Queen.
Yes, but some of you, in fact quite a lot of you actually, were not happy about this at all. GB News viewer Annie in Norwich, thank you very much for getting in touch, Annie, wrote in to say Harry and Meghan should, and she's capped up the words not, so she really means it, should not have been invited to Jubilee events. They have disrespected the Queen and country and should, again, here we go, caps again, never be involved in any royal engagements. Again, Annie, I sympathise with you on that one.
Well, another viewer, Avril, said Harry and Meghan do not cost us anything. They had a right to be at the celebrations because they are family. So a contrasting view there. While we're pleased to be joined by royal biographer Angela Levin, who is a regular on our show, and we love her for it. Look, Angela, it's divisive. I think it's fair to say most people aren't very keen on Meghan and Harry. But they are still family, aren't they? So they did sort of have a right to be there.
Yes, I mean, the Queen wanted them. I mean, before the Jubilee absolutely started, she made an announcement that she hoped everyone would come together and, you know, get on very well. She couldn't say that to all the rest of us if she wasn't talking to her son, however bad or irresponsible he's been. So she wanted them to come, so they came. But it was a very cunning way that they came. The palace were very clever about it all. They made sure that they realised that the royal family had moved on. I think that was a very big mistake. It's easy to do. You go away, you stay away, and you still think that things are going on as they were when you were there. But not at all. The family is much closer with Camilla, William and Catherine. You could see they were bonded as one group, and they were sort of left out. And they had to sit in the wrong side at St Paul's for the service because all the key players were on the left and they were sent to the right. And I think they were very, very cross. But...
Were they? Sorry, from what you understand, Meghan and Harry were angry about it?
They left, you know, because they wanted photographs with the royals. So they couldn't get any while they were in the church because it was too wide for any lens. But also, when they took the two children to meet... Well, we don't know if there was two children. I'm going to ask, where was Archie? Took Lilibet to meet the Queen. They asked if they could bring a private cameraman to take pictures of them.
Really?
And the Queen said, absolutely not. This is a private event. This is not for the public. And they must have been very upset because a picture of the Queen and her great-grandson with the same names would have earned them a lot of money on Netflix or anything.
It's so sad, isn't it? It's pathetic.
But it's completely irresponsible and unkind to do that. Also, they had a party on the Saturday for her first birthday, which was on that day. Absolutely fine, no problem. But they allegedly asked William and Kate, without bothering to find out that they were going to be in Wales all day, come back and then go to the party. So it's just assumption that everyone can just cancel everything because here they are. Greet them with open arms.
No.
But where was Archie?
Yeah. Where was Archie?
Why didn't he go with his sister to meet the Queen? I thought that was absolutely extraordinary thing to do, unless they left him at home. We don't know. We don't know many of the things.
I mean, it's all very odd, isn't it? And what do you think they would have... Because this was it their second time or their first time since they stopped being working members of the royal coming to the UK?
For Meghan, it was the first time.
The first time. What do you think the impression she's left with... Because would she be regretting how toxic perhaps they've been, or will she actually just be thinking, I'm glad I left this family?
I think she would be absolutely furious because she had a plan. She's very strong-minded. She wants the things that she wants to do done. And she's got lots of agendas there. And she couldn't go with the agendas because the palace aides and whoever else made sure that they didn't use them to A, earn money from, and B, to tell anything that they said. They didn't want to talk to them because they've had experience of them, selling it.
Well, yeah.
Just quickly, Angela, because I know it's been a bit short and sweet like this, but
it's
you
sweet,
are...
it's all right.
Can do. Obviously you're very plugged into the royal family. Of course, you wrote, was it Camilla's biography, I believe? Yes.
I've nearly finished it.
Nearly finished. She's writing. Right. It'll be box office. Don't miss it. But how is our Queen? Is she all right?
Well, we don't know exactly, and quite rightly too, but I think that we won't see her for quite a long time. If we do, it'll be remotely. The last day when she actually got back on the balcony again in green and looked wonderful, she stayed only 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You could see she was in slight pain. She's 96, and it's very hard to do that. But this is what her aim was. This is what she wanted to reach. And now she's got to get over, I think, Prince Philip, because she had this to look forward to, and
Bless her.
I don't know what she has to look forward to.
Bless her, absolutely.
Gosh, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angela. I mean, there's a massive contrast, isn't there, between the Queen, who, and I know she was obviously born into that position and Meghan wasn't, but the way she's sort of gone about her duties, no fuss, you know, not making it about her, serving her duties and her people. And then I think there's a massive contrast with how Meghan, it does all feel very self-absorbed a lot of the time, and it feels like everything is about making money and how famous they are, and that's so contrary to what the royal family represents, isn't it? So I think it's a shame.
No, look, absolutely. I don't know if she thinks she is. I mean, for most people, I suspect most people watching this, the idea of just even being invited to meet the Queen, right, let alone being, I suppose, surrounded by the royals, would be enough. The idea that I'd ask for a private camera to rock up as well, it would be such an honour in its own right that I don't think the last thing on my mind would be whether or not there was a camera there. But Angela, thank you so much, Angela, of course. Right, OK, so that's very nearly it from us. We're going to dip into the inbox for one last time, GBViews, GBnews.uk, and lots of people are getting in touch, yes, exactly about this, about the Meghan and Harry issue. I can't remember the name on this now. He says he's sick of whinge and ginge. Good comment, that. Right. Also, on the cost of living stuff that we did with Liam Halligan about, well, the fact that essentially we're all skint now, Avril's got in touch. Now, I said it earlier, I found out the other week that I was going through my... Look, might shock you all to know, I'm not exactly on top of my personal finances, but my bank account looks like the Somme. But anyway, and so, basically, I realised that I've been paying 30 quid a month for, like, the last 9 months for something that I'd never signed up for.
9 years.
No, for something I'd never signed up for. It was obviously... but Avril's been in touch and says she's been paying 47 quid a month for books that she's never bought every single month. And I think it is worth checking your account.
Yeah, definitely. I think I had to do that recently because I'm trying to take out a mortgage and I had to go through my bank and, justify the transactions.
Yeah.
It's a really good exercise. I noticed things I shouldn't be paying for on there.
I can't justify any of my transactions.
Yes.
Not even to myself.
Well, that is it from us here at To The Point, but don't go away. Up next is the briefing and Prime Minister's questions, of course, because it's Wednesday and we will be back with you tomorrow. Have a lovely day.
Hi there, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Another fine day to come for the far north of Scotland. Showers elsewhere across the UK, with more prolonged rain for some. Mostly, that will be just north of the central belt as a slow-moving weather front moves north and then effectively stalls through the rest of the day. To the south of that front, extensive showers breaking out across the UK. Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern England, seeing slow-moving showers with some places seeing large amounts of rainfall totals in a short space of time. Could be tricky travelling conditions. To the south again, a keen breeze pushing the showers through. Sunny spells in between those showers. The odd rumble of thunder is possible in some of the livelier downpours, but with the sunshine in between, feeling pleasant enough. 18 to 22 Celsius or 23 in the south. Mid to high teens further north, but feeling cool where we've got the extensive cloud for eastern parts of Scotland. The far north of Scotland stays dry throughout the day and into the evening and overnight, but an area of rain just about affects Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and northwest England through the night time. Clear spells further south again, and a bright start to the day for Wales, the southwest, the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. It does turn cloudy from the west through the day, some outbreaks of rain affecting Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest by late morning. Not much rain, but it will be cloudy and damp in these areas. Brighter skies further east, but still a few showers for eastern Scotland, the far northeast of England as well. But feeling warm in the sunshine in the east, 18 to 21 Celsius. Not so warm as the cloud and rain in the west continues and the wind picks up later Thursday. And that's the main theme, I think, Thursday night going into Friday and indeed Saturday. Strengthening wind, breezy for everyone, but the strongest winds will affect northwest Scotland with the risk of gales for exposed coasts. And it's across western Scotland and Northern Ireland where we'll also see frequent showers.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons